will stand because the Bible says the grass withers, the flower fades, but the word of God will stand forever. He is the same yesterday, today, and forevermore. And so I want us to understand that the things that Solomon is teaching us in the book of Proverbs are very, very important and critical to where we are as a society and where we're going as a society as well. So I want to read verses 10 through 22 just so we can understand some context. I have so much just oozing out of me this morning that there's no way that we're ever going to get to the end of this. So I'm just going to give you what I got, and then we're going to have to move on. Okay? So Proverbs chapter 2, verse 10. If you have it, shout, I've got it. If you're in the house, I would ask that you would stand just in reverence to God's word. If you're not, if you're watching by Facebook, simply open your devices and follow along with us. It says this, and I'm reading from the NIV. It says, for wisdom will enter your heart, and knowledge will be pleasant to your soul. Discretion will protect you, and understanding will guard you. Wisdom will save you from the ways of wicked men, from men whose words are perverse, who have left the straight paths of walk in dark ways, who delight in doing wrong and rejoice in the perverseness of evil. Men whose paths are crooked and who are devious in their ways. Wisdom will save you also from the adulterous woman, from the wayward woman with her seductive words, who has left the partner of her youth and ignored the covenant she made before God. Surely her house leads down to death, and her path to the spirit of the dead. None who go to her return or attain the paths of life. Thus you will walk in the ways of the good and keep to the paths of the righteous. For the upright will live in the land, and the blameless will remain in it. But the wicked will be cut off from the land, and the unfaithful will be torn from it. You may be seated in the presence of the Lord. I don't want to put a text or a topic to this particular word today. I just simply want to dive in. We're in Proverbs chapter 2. Verse 10, as we dive in, tells us that in order for us to enjoy wisdom, remember that Proverbs is the book of wisdom. It's the book where wisdom is being, it should be internalized. It's being presented to us throughout the book. Proverbs has 31 chapters, and I suggested to you at the beginning of this teaching in Proverbs that you would read at least a chapter a day. It's not a very hard feat because it's not a very long read, but I believe that Proverbs was made to be read at least once a day. The chapters at least once a day. And by the time you get to March 31st or April 31st, then you start again at chapter 1 in order to hide these words in your heart so that you might not sin against God. In order for us to enjoy the wisdom that Proverbs or Solomon is sharing with us in Proverbs, we must first allow it to enter your heart, because the ear is not good enough. It must enter your heart, because once a thing is in a man or a woman's heart, it is virtually impossible to change it. And that's why it's important that we understand the importance of putting things in our heart. The Bible says that we ought to hide the word of God in our heart so that we might not sin against God. We ought to hide the word in our heart. It's also important that you understand that once a person has made up in their mind or determined in their heart that they're going to do wrong, then it's very hard to deter them from what they have determined. I want you to understand that Solomon is saying wisdom is one of those things that it is impossible for wisdom to go in one ear and out of the other. unless a person has turned it off. If wisdom goes in one ear, it latches on to the heart. I'm talking about wisdom. This is essential because the heart naturally desires to entertain sin and foolishness. The heart naturally desires to entertain foolishness. And in order to be guarded from the infection of sin, one must receive the vaccination of wisdom. I want you to notice also that he talks about, in verse 11, he talks about this word discretion. Somebody say it with me, discretion. He says discretion will protect you and understanding will guard you. Now, I've already given you the definition and even an illustration of what it means to understand. But I want us to look at this word discretion, because the word discretion literally means wise planning. Wise planning. It means to consider. It means to plan on purpose. It describes the ability to form plans based on knowledge, to make plans based on knowledge, based on what you know. That is discretion. It's the ability to make proper decisions. It's the quality of showing discernment or good judgment in your conduct. I'll say that again. It's the quality of showing discernment. We're talking about discernment during our weekly studies, or good judgment in your conduct. It describes, discretion does, an inward thought process leading to a decision. It's deliberate. It's purposeful. It's behaving, watch this, discretion is behaving or speaking in a way to avoid causing offense. To avoid causing offense and revealing private information. Discretion also refers to the freedom to decide what should be done in a particular situation. The Bible is telling us, Solomon is telling his son, and I believe God is telling his children, that discretion shall preserve you. It shall guard you. And understanding shall keep you. And one of the things that we lack in this world today is discretion. Nothing is discreet. No one wants to be discreet. Everybody wants to put their everything everywhere. And I mean that in all sense of the phrase. Everyone wants to put their everything everywhere. With the assistance of social media, nothing is no longer discreet. People put their everything on social media. Their days are chronicled on social media. If I want to know anything about you and I have just a novice understanding of some kind of discernment or wisdom, then I am able to read you like a book simply because of some of the things that people put on social media, and then have nerves to get on there and say, what you see is not who I am. That's not the real me. It's a pretty good indication of who you are, because nothing seems to be discreet. And the Bible is saying, Solomon is telling us that discretion will preserve you. Now, what does preserve mean? It's a sense of security. It's a sense of guarding. And if you want to guard who you are, somebody say reputation. Reputation. This morning I shared with our 8 o'clock group that reputation is something that we rarely think about, but reputation is actually a living thing. It's a living thing. Why? Because reputation has the ability to grow. Reputation is more important than we even think of, because because reputation has the ability to hang around where you've been, and reputation also has the ability to arrive where you're going before you get there. And so some people will say your reputation precedes you. I could actually say that because of my reputation, people have ignored what's on paper and have acknowledged what reputation says. I'll put it to you. Let me say it this way. Reputation is so important, and reputation is so firm that people will rather believe reputation than what you say. You can say you're one thing, you can give words about who you are, you can describe yourself to a T, but people will much rather believe reputation. I would even say, Tyler, that reputation has gotten me things that documents could not. People look at certain documents, and what's legally written about me, they will bypass it and say, I know what the paper says, but because of who you are, because of your reputation, I will bypass. I wish I was in the right place. I will bypass what the paper says and go with what your reputation says. And the same way reputation will open doors for you, understand that reputation can close doors for you, because reputation is always growing. You're always adding to your reputation. You're never taking away from your reputation. You're always building your reputation. Here's the thing. You can build negatively or you can build positively, but you're always building your reputation.
That's true.
And the writer says that discretion will guard your reputation. Discretion will guard your reputation. What are you saying, Pastor? What I'm saying is there are many people, including myself, that don't deserve to be where we are simply because of the things you don't know about. If you only knew what kind of person I could be, you would not stand here or sit here and listen to me and call me pastor. But don't look at me funny, because I know some of the stuff about some of you. And so all of us have sinned and come short of the glory of God. The difference is, though there are those who know how to operate in discretion. And then there are those who live out loud. I didn't want to go there, right? And so he goes on to say, discretion will protect you and understanding will guard you. Wisdom, verse 12, wisdom will save you from the ways of, and then he begins to talk about these two tempters. For the rest of what we'll see in this chapter, we'll talk about two tempters. Tempter number one is the wicked man, and tempter number two is the wicked woman. I will call both of them, for the sake of our text today, chameleons.
All right.
I'll call them chameleons because of the way Solomon actually describes these two. The first one, and let me preface all of this by saying everything that we're going to talk about can be applied to either or. Understand that Solomon is writing to his son, and so he desires that his son would take heed to the words that he's sharing with him concerning women. But I want you to also flip it and reverse it and be able to apply this to women as well. All right? And so when I talk about the tempter being a man, you can apply that to a woman. And when I talk about the tempter being a woman, you can apply that to a man as well. Y'all got me? Yeah. All right. Y'all ready to dig in? Yeah. All right, here we go. He says, first of all, wisdom will save you from the ways of wicked men. Wisdom will preserve you from tempter number one, which is the deception of evil men. And from verses 12 to 15, he gives us characteristics of a wicked man. Tempter number one. And I want to share this with my daughters today because I want you to notice that this person, look at what he says, the first thing he dives into as he talks about wicked men is the mouth, the tongue, the words. He says their words are perverse. And the reason why I'm calling tempter number one and tempter number two chameleons is because of their words, the slickness of their words, the seduction of their words, the way that they twist their words. They know how to say all the right things. I mean, almost to the point that it seems as though they're reading it from a script. They know how to say what needs to be said. And one of the things that a chameleon is known for is taking on the color or camouflaging itself with its environment. And you have to be careful because there are some men who know how to use their words to entice you and to make it seem. In other words, they use as a weapon the ability to be compatible. And so they will tell you all the right things, and it sounds like you like the same movies. It sounds like you have the same favorite color. It sounds like you all like the same foods. And so you just can't believe how compatible we are. I just can't believe it's like God made you for me. We like the same things. We laughed at the same time. I was just thinking about you. You were just thinking about me. It's just like a chameleon because these words are twisted. Why are you laughing?
It was all a dream.
It plays on compatibility, and we seemingly like the same things. And so what the chameleon will do is they will find out what you like. They will find out what you're about, and they become that.
That's smooth, man. That's smooth.
They become that. And this is why you have to stop sharing your secrets so fast. I mean, as soon as you meet, you done told everything, and so now they know what to be and when to be it. And if you're not careful, you will fall in love with a chameleon. Once you have given your heart and your soul to a chameleon, then you eventually begin to see. The thing about a chameleon, Talus, is that when it determines what color it wants to be, it can be that color for only a certain amount of time. But if it steps outside of that, even for the shortest amount of time, then its true color begins to show. And what has happened with a lot of people is that you fell in love with the chameleon, and they were everything, and they were just everything that you dreamed of, and everything. And you know, I prayed for somebody like you, and I prayed that God would send me that person, and God sent me you. Wrong. That was a chameleon who knew exactly what you were praying for, because understand that the devil gets in your dreams too. So he will become or send exactly what you're searching for, exactly what you're looking for. And once you get that joker home, you find out that not only was it a chameleon, but it's a lizard. With a slithery tongue. And as it sticks its tongue out, it twists words. and you start to say things like, I thought you said,
Come on.
Catch it.
Yeah. Come on.
and discernment kicks in, but because of the slickness of the words, you fall into the trap of the chameleon. So don't expose too much too early. Some people date number one, everything come out. And when I say everything, I mean everything. Everything comes out. And especially if you have sex with a person on the first time, or even within the first few meetings, understand, I talked about this, I'm not going to talk about it again. If you want to know about it, go and watch my video from last night. But then you have soul ties. Will and Jada called it entanglements. That's the nice way of saying demonic soul ties. You establish these soul ties and you move from one person to another and you have all of these entanglements. And I often say some people I don't know how they make it down the wedding aisle. I don't know how they make it down to the aisle in front of the preacher, because they're so entangled in soul ties. Both of them, they're doing this all the way down to I don't know how they can literally walk, because there's so many tangles around their feet and their legs and their arms and their mouth. I don't know how they can actually say, I do.
They lying.
You're right. You're right. And when they say they do, they actually don't. You married a chameleon. He says, wisdom will preserve you from that. When you have wisdom. Now remember, when we're talking about chapters 1 and the beginning of chapter 2, he's talking about the wisdom that comes from your mother and your father. That comes from the things that they have taught you. And when you abandon those things, you open up your life to chameleons. Now here's one thing about wisdom. An older person, and that's why it's very important that before you start getting serious with the person, you bring them to your parents, considering your parents are wise. Because we have some old fools. But considering that your parents are wise, it is important that you introduce a person to your family. Now, some people have this practice of, I'm not going to introduce them to my family until it's serious. Well, then it's too late. So that's why it's important that that parents know what's going on from the beginning. Right? Know what's going on from the beginning, because a wise person has the other sense of the word discretion. They are able to determine, they are able to see beyond. And one thing about a chameleon is that a parent can see right through it.
All right. That's right. That's right.
Someone with wisdom can see right through it, and they can tell you that this person is a chameleon. It says wisdom will save you from those things. If you take heed and hang these words, these nuggets of wisdoms around your neck, then you will be able to avoid the pitfalls. It's not saying that you won't be tempted. It's not saying that you won't be tricked sometimes, but you won't be tricked for long. Because you have wisdom in your corner. Look at what he says about the wicked man. He says, not only is his words perverse and twisted, but he has left the straight path to walk in dark ways. You mean to tell me this joker was on the right path and left the path with light, left the path with a clear direction, left the path where he could see the destination to go on this unknown trail of darkness? You mean to tell me he was headed right? Yeah, he was. That's how he know how to tell you all the right things. And he was on the path of righteousness, because look at what it says. It says he left the straight paths to walk in dark ways. It's a deliberate choice.
Right.
It's a deliberate choice to leave the path of righteousness, the path of life. Talking about his parents raised him right, but now he's going in a different direction. He left the path of the straight path to walk in dark ways. And look at this. He delights in doing wrong. He delights in doing wrong. He rejoices in perverseness of evil. He likes mischief. And there are some of us who like bad boys. There are some of us who like the ones with dark ways. I don't know, it's just something mysterious about them that turns me on. You're going to see what's mysterious about them, and you're going to see that what turns you on going to turn you out. There are some people who choose. Now, you're on the path of righteousness, and you see this joker standing in darkness talking about, come on. And we will leave the path of righteousness, the path with light, to go and follow one with darkness. Now, here's the thing about one with light and one with darkness. The thing about it is, one with light, you see him. You see how he looks. But we don't like that. We don't like that. He's nerdy. Oh, he's this and he's that. And I don't want anyone. I don't want anyone who I can see. I want someone who, you see, when a person is standing in darkness, what you think you see is not what you actually see. And so what you see is body and language and money and material things. You see that. Why? Because darkness can take on any shape. And so because darkness can take on any shape, darkness can be what you want it to be. But it can only be that for a little while. Because once, even if you're in the dark, once you get close enough to something, you can really see what it really is. Once you get close enough to it, you can see what it is. You can see what it really is. You can see what the real shape is. And so you might see the one in light looking bougie, looking nerdy, looking like something you don't want to be with. But God is saying, this is what I've chosen for you. But no, you want what's in the dark. Because it looks like what I want. Am I helping you? And this joker, he delights in doing wrong. He loves it. Because it's in his heart. And you have determined that because God lives in me, I'm going to change that dark man. I'm going to change that dark man, and I'm going to bring him to the light, and we're going to walk together in Christian love. Wrong. He delights in doing wrong. He loves his perverseness. You're not going to change him. He's going to change you. I told you I had too much. I'm not going to finish this. Verse 15, whose paths are crooked and who are devious in their ways. The paths are crooked. Now, he was on a path that was straight. Now the paths are crooked, which means it has a lot of turns, twists, and turns. You're never headed in a direction. You're going to know that you're with a person who has gone down the path of darkness because they don't have a place to take you. When you ask, where are we going? What are we going to accomplish? What kind of life? They don't know. Now, they can tell you something because they only see what's at the end of the curve. But once they get to that curve, life takes you somewhere else. And so life is just a bunch of twists and turns, and you never get to a place. You only get to the end of a curve. before you head in another direction. And that's why you do know that the word destiny means an end, right? That's why we look at this person and we say, this is, oh, we're destined to be together. This is my destiny. This is my soul mate. And all they're doing is taking you down back roads.
All right, now, come on.
Oh, y'all not ready for me today. All right, y'all ready, huh? All right, verse 16, let's go. Wisdom. So that was tempter number one, but now let's look at tempter number two. Now I want you to understand that I'm not being biased when I jump into this text. Understand that Solomon is trying to give his son wisdom about women. Right. Solomon had over 100 wives. So if anybody can tell you about a woman, certainly Solomon can. It says this, wisdom will save you also from the adulterous woman, from the wayward woman with her, what? Seductive words, chameleon. Wisdom will preserve you from the deception of tempter number two, which is the evil woman, the adulterous woman that he talks about from verse 16 through verse 19. Now, I want you to know something, because Proverbs, when we think about women, we often think about Proverbs 31, and we think that Proverbs 31 is the ideal woman. And I've had so many opportunities to preach from Proverbs 31, and I've heard so many sermons about or coming from Proverbs 31, and people use Proverbs 31 as one that you can teach women to be like, and also you can teach women what not to be like. But I want to contrast Proverbs 31 with Proverbs 5. Because Proverbs 5, if Proverbs 31 is the virtuous woman, then Proverbs 5, I can't call her virtuous. Proverbs 5 is a nasty woman. That's the best word I can come up with. This woman, and he begins to describe her in Proverbs chapter 2, but when we get to Proverbs chapter 5, and we'll actually turn there in just a few minutes, but when we get to Proverbs chapter 5, he actually goes into detail about the same woman. And so it's imperative that we not just read chapter 2, but we go to chapter 5. This woman that he talks about is responsible for many men being in jail. This woman is responsible for many kings being dethroned. This woman is responsible for many men leaving their good wife and their good house with their children and going to live with this woman, the woman called adulteress. She is estranged from godly covenant, which means she doesn't have the same values, nor does she have the same intent. She entices with her words. As a matter of fact, he says in chapter 5, verse 3, that the lips of this adulterous woman drips like honey from a honeycomb. They seem sweet. Her mouth is smoother than oil. That means the words that she says will cause you to slip. She has these three, and I'll break it up into three, but I guess it's really two, but we can look at it as three. she has these three weapons of mass destruction that she uses to trip up any man. Sex, flattery, and egotism. Sex, flattery, and egotism. Now, I want you young men to listen to me today, all right? Because, now, as it pertains to sex, she will use sex, and that will only be enticing to men who operate on the lowest levels. I'm talking about if you don't know who you are and you don't know who your creator is and you don't know your creative ability, then any man that doesn't know those things will fall for sex. For anyone that wants to give it to him, he will fall for it. Because he doesn't know who his creator is. He may know about him, but he doesn't know who his master is. There was one woman that told me some years ago, Talis, all men are dogs. I said, yes, but some dogs are obedient to their master. And so if the master says stay, they stay. And then I also said there wouldn't be dogs if you wouldn't be giving out the kibbles. But but he says she uses sex as a means of tripping up a man. And so again, if a man does not know his, number one, his creator, he does not have a relationship with his creator, he does not know who he is, and he does not know his creative ability, then he will fall for sex. I'm talking about married men. I'm not talking about a single man. I'm talking about married men. So even if there's nothing, whether there's something going on at home or nothing going on at home, if a man knows his creator, knows his creative ability, because when you know who you are and you know who God created you to be, and you know the anointing that's on your life, you are not willing to sacrifice your future for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes with the adulterous woman. And so I know that there are some of you that are super spiritual that are saying, well, what about those anointed people that have fallen into adultery? They were not enticed by sex. Because, again, remember I told you that the use of sex is for the lowest level of men. When she realizes that she can't pull him with sex, she uses the next thing, which is flattery. And flattery and egotism actually go together, because a man with a giant ego always wants it fed. And if you don't feed it, he starts to feed it himself. He starts to boast on himself. He starts to talk about himself. And watch this. If the wife at home stops feeding his ego, he will be attracted to the woman who does. And so you will hear things like, people will come into my office and they will say, it wasn't even about the sex. Because it wasn't. She listens to me. Yeah. It seems that way. And in many cases, it is because she fed his ego. You stopped. You bashed him. You told him what he didn't want to hear. Or not even what he didn't want to hear, but maybe what he needed to hear, but you didn't balance that with feeding his ego. And immediately when you stop feeding a man's ego, he's going to find somewhere to eat. Am I making sense or not? She feeds the part of him that is the most insatiable. He will never get full of feeding his ego. And the minute, I'm trying to help some women at home now. The minute you stop feeding that ego, Satan, somebody else is there. The adulterous woman, she knows how to do this. Her words are enticing. And that's why it's important, men and women, that when you do things to better yourself, you do it for you and not to please someone else. Because if you're trying to lose weight for your husband or your wife, or you're trying to lose weight for somebody else, you're trying to make up yourself for somebody else, you're trying to look good for somebody else, then when that person doesn't notice it, you'll gladly give it to the person who does. So you're trying to lose weight for your husband. You're trying to look good for your husband. You put on your makeup and you put on everything, and you're doing that for your husband, and he walks right in and doesn't even notice. But if you're doing it for somebody else, then the next person that says, "Oh, you look nice today," just damage all of your insides. Because somebody else paid attention. It's the same thing with a man. The same thing with a man. If he is not trying to look good for himself first, and then his spouse. See, I need to skip some things because I want to make sure that I get this out before I close. Somebody say intimacy. Intimacy. Say it again. Intimacy. I want you to say intimacy because I want you to understand that there is something called intimacy infidelity. Intimacy infidelity. Intimacy is something that you share with someone and no one else. That's the Arvie definition. Intimacy is something that you share with someone and no one else. Now, there are some people who are committing infidelity with their intimacy because they're intimate with other people. And I'm not just talking about sex. You can be emotionally unfaithful. You can be spiritually unfaithful. You can be emotionally unfaithful, and of course you can be physically unfaithful. There are people that are committing emotional infidelity. They're married. And this is why I'm talking about this, because when you lend your ear and you allow, a man knows when another woman is feeding his ego. You know it. And so it may have led to sex. Oh, Lord Jesus Christ. If y'all only knew how my mind works, it's like a million things are just coming, and I have to pull out the one that's safe. For me to say on camera. Oh, it ain't a lie. I just have to pull the one that's safe to say on camera. And so and so the penetration started before the bed. It started in the mind. And so before I opened up your body, I opened up your mind. And I allowed you to enter private spaces. Y'all got me? And so before he slept with her in the bed, or wherever it was, he allowed her to enter private spaces. But the reason she could get there is because you weren't standing guard. The reason he could get to that place in her mind was because you weren't there standing guard. And so, even spiritually, how many of you know that your spouse, I'm talking to married people, your spouse should see a spiritual part of you that no one else sees? Let me put it this way. If the church people on Sundays are seeing the most intimate part of your worship, then something's wrong. Your spouse should see a part of your prayer life that nobody else sees. Your spouse should see a part of your intimacy with God that no one else sees. They ought to see the part of you that no one else can see. But some of us are committing spiritual infidelity because when we're at home, we don't even talk about God. We don't pray together. We don't have those intimate moments together. But when you come to church, you're falling all over the floor. Falling all over the floor. Now, if your spouse comes to church with you, they're like, what's happening? You are committing. There are people that are committing emotional. Oh, I got to quit. There are people that are committing emotional infidelity because they are sharing emotions with other people that they're not sharing with their spouse. And they're letting other people into areas that they're not allowing their spouse to enter. Watch this. Nor do they feel sometimes that their spouse wants to enter. Because when I'm trying to be emotional and I'm trying to open up my mind to you, you don't want to come in there. You only want to come between my legs. And so if you're only interested in coming, if you're only interested in entering my body and never my mind, then you're going to lose me on the highest levels. All right, we're going to stop right there, and then we'll go deeper on next week. These are the things that Solomon shared with his son, because he wants his son to avoid pitfalls. And people say the Bible is old-fashioned. I would argue that the voice you're listening to may be more old-fashioned than the Bible is. Because the Bible is still relevant. And the Bible will blow your mind when you actually dissect Scripture and allow the Word to speak to you. And so I don't want us to take this trek through Proverbs lightly. I don't want us to go through Proverbs and it not have impact our lives. You need Proverbs for day-to-day living. Has this blessed you on today? Hallelujah. Wisdom will keep you. Then tempter number one and tempter number two. Tempters are out there. The text says that her house leaded down to death. I want you to understand that when, especially you men out there, that when you not even enter the home physically, but when you begin to entertain the adulterous woman, when you begin to entertain the adulterous woman, she is helping you dig your grave. Because notice that it says the direction of her house. You can't go to her house without going down. Do you see that? You see that in the text? It says the direction of her house leadeth downward. There is no way that you can go to her house and go up. She lived downstairs. It suggests that she's taking you to an early grave. And I just want to say, woe unto you if you have a wife who lives high, but you spend your time at the house down there. Woe unto you if you have a husband who lives high, but you spend your time at the house down low. And listen, let me tell you, there's a lot of freaky things down low. Be careful of the woman who calls herself, or the woman whose address is down low. Be careful of the man whose address is down